Namaste from Coloring Pages Bliss, and welcome to part 2 of my little video tutorial series about Jennifer's rule of blending thirds. Now in part 2 we're going to take Jennifer's rule of blending thirds to the next level by adding some base layers and some odorless mineral spirits. And I'm so excited because this is like magic and it's going to make your blending more dynamic, and it's like a shortcut too. So lots of fun here. So if you didn't watch part 1, please go back and watch it because it's going to explain exactly how to do Jennifer's rule of blending thirds to get all these beautiful results. So let's move on now to the first part of Jennifer's tips and techniques, and that's base layers. And I've got here some markers and highlighters we're going to play with, and they're my favorite tools to use for base layers. You can also use watercolors and all kinds of other really neat art media for base layers, but markers and highlighters are my favorite because they're inexpensive and handy and almost everybody has them. Okay, but let's start by talking about highlighters. One of the reasons they're one of my favorites to use for base layers is because the ink inside highlighters are designed to float on top of paper. And now I've done an entire video dedicated to using highlighters as base layers. So check out the link to that video in the description and you can go watch that and learn all about how to use base layers for your gel pens and other media. But right now we're going to talk about how to use it for your blending with color pencils. Now I'm going to use highlighters with my Prismacolor pencils, so let's get set up for that. This highlighter trick works for any brand of color pencils. So no matter what brand pencils you have, get out those highlighters and try this out. Like I said, the great thing about highlighters is that the ink has additives in it so that it will float on the top of the paper. This means you can use it in coloring books where the paper is really thin. Highlighter ink is also usually very translucent, so it gives a nice background to your color pencil art. And a lot of them are fluorescent, which will give your art a glowing effect. So you get some pretty interesting effects using them as a base layer. Now if you have a limited number of color pencils, adding base layers is a great way to change up the way those colors appear. So you can make a single pencil change into all kinds of different shades. It's a great trick. Okay, I'm all set up and ready for this experiment. In this top square, I used Jennifer's rule of blending thirds and these 3 Prismacolor Premier pencils. And if you want to know again how to do Jennifer's blending rule of thirds, make sure you watch video number 1. Now I have to sharpen these pencils, so we'll take a quick break and give you some tips on sharpening color pencils. Now I'm going to have a series here very soon on some of the latest color pencil sharpeners, so watch for that here on my YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button and set your notifications so you won't miss that series of reviews. Now remember, when you're sharpening your color pencils, that you hold your pencil still and you move your manual sharpener around your pencil. This protects the tips of your pencils and helps it so that the core doesn't break. Another important thing to remember is to use a very sharp pencil sharpener. The sharper, the better. This pencil sharpener I'm using today is called the Alvin Brass Bullet. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the steps of Jennifer's rule of blending thirds in each of these squares now and see what these base layers of a highlighter does to the color. This should be exciting. I'm doing the final final step here now of Jennifer's rule of blending thirds. And we're starting to see how amazing a highlighter base layer can be. Now on this one we use the fluorescent yellow. And anywhere where we would have seen white flecks, like in this little sample square here, we're seeing that fluorescent yellow glowing through the blues. And isn't that amazing? And it really does quite glow and gives a very neat dynamic to this coloring. It would be really neat if you had a coloring page where you wanted your eye to go right to a certain object. You could have a glowing effect underneath it by using a fluorescent highlighter. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, let's come down to this one now where we used a blue highlighter, and it has done an amazing job of making all the white specks just disappear. And if you remember from part one, in order to get all those white specks to disappear, we had to go through all the steps of Jennifer's rule of blending thirds a second time and burnish down all the teeth and texture of the paper. It was a lot of work. But because we have used the highlighter for a base layer, we didn't have to do as much work, and all those white specks are gone, and we have a beautiful blue square to look at. So pretty. Okay, then here's a really fun one where we used the pink as our base layer. And isn't it beautiful, the purple we ended up with? It's just fantastic, and it's a good example of what I was talking about, how you can use base layers to make your colors of your color pencils expand. And instead of just having blues, now we've got some lavenders here by just adding a pink base layer. So much fun. Okay, let's move over to this side of the page where we're going to bring out the Polychromos. Okay, there's our beautiful Polychromo sample rectangle with no base layer. And in these two down here, we're going to use an alcohol base marker for our base layer. Now, when you use an alcohol base marker, remember that alcohol base markers are fantastic at very dense colors when you're coloring. But they do soak through your papers. That's kind of their whole purpose, is to really go deep into the fibers of the paper. Unlike a wet or water-based marker, like your Tombows or your Crayola Super Tips, they are water-based, and when you use those, they do have a tendency to change the texture of your paper. And so I like to use alcohol-based markers like Sharpies or Copics to do base layers because they don't change the texture of your paper. Okay, we're going to repeat Jennifer's rule of blending thirds over the top of each one of these sample squares and see the results. And the fun thing about the alcohol markers versus the highlighters is the alcohol markers will give you a really rich base layer, and you're going to see quite a different effect. It's really neat. Okay, as I put the last layer of color pencil down for Jennifer's rule of blending thirds, you can see how dynamic and rich the color has become, especially when you look back and compare to our first square here that had no base layer. And the color is so beautiful. It's like a sunset here with this Spanish orange marker underneath it. So pretty. And then you come down here and you have this peach marker underneath the same three colors of color pencil, and you get a very different feel. This one does actually, to me, it looks exactly like a peach. A nice ripe summer peach. So beautiful. your options really are practically limitless between the combinations you can make with your color pencils and then the base layers you can add underneath it. There are so many different things you can do. Okay, as I do the finishing touches here, I have one more tip to share with you, and it is almost like a magic ingredient in our coloring arsenal. This is odorless mineral spirits right here, and this is the first kind I purchased. I believe I got it at Hobby Lobby. A lot of you know it by the name brand Gamsol. And these are basically the same thing. This is just a name brand difference here. And what it is a solvent. You can use it to clean your paintbrushes and other things. It says it's odorless, but it's not. It is highly toxic. You have to be really careful with it. You don't want to breathe the fumes. It's combustible. Don't use it in a closed closet. Don't let your pets or your kids get to it. This is serious stuff. But because it is so serious, it works like magic. The first time I tried this stuff, I was blown away by it, and it changed the way I color. When I learned about it, it was through a YouTube video. An artist shared this trick, and it almost angered me because I wished I had known about it a long time ago, and it felt to me like the artists were holding back and not sharing their best secrets that could help me with my own art. And so when I learned this trick and discovered how much it improved my own art, I decided that I needed to share all the tricks that I knew as much as possible with as many people as possible, so that everyone could benefit from all these tricks and get as much joy out of art as possible. So I'm going to share this with you today as it applies to Jennifer's rule of blending thirds. So what we're going to do, I'm setting up right here and now with my color pencils. I'm going to do 3 samples of Jennifer's rule of blending thirds, and I'm going to do it with 3 different kinds of pencils so you can see how the odorless mineral spirits work on each kind of pencil. So we're going to use Polychromos, which is a artist quality oil-based pencils, and we're also going to use our Prismacolor Premier pencils, which are a waxed-based artist quality pencil, very creamy and wonderful. And we're going to use my Crazy Art pencils. Let me bring those over, which are basically a school grade wax-based pencil. Those will be over here. And we're going to do Jennifer's rule of blending thirds in each one of these squares. So let me go ahead and do that. And then we're going to use the odorless mineral spirits, and I'll tell you why it's like magic and show you how it works. And I'm going to bet that if you don't have this already, you're going to run out and buy it. So let's hit fast forward and get this all set up for this really cool experiment. Done a really fast Jennifer's rule of blending thirds in each of these 3 squares. And like I said, we're going to use the odorless mineral spirits, and so I didn't have to do a perfect blending job because we're going to let the mineral spirits do the work for us. I usually take the large bottle of mineral spirits and pour some out into a small bottle that I can take around with me. This is just a little oil bottle that I picked up off on Amazon. I'm going to put links to all these products in my video description, so if you'd like to pick some of these up, you can. And then what I do is I have my little bowl and I put some of the odorless mineral spirits into the bowl. This way it won't contaminate the main amount of my mineral spirits. And then you're going to need either a paintbrush to apply the mineral spirits, or you're going to want one of these blending stumps. Now, blending stumps are my favorite thing to use with the mineral spirits. I get better control than with a paintbrush, but you can use and try both and see which one's your favorite. A blending stump is basically a pressed piece of paper, so this is just paper pressed into a pencil-shaped tube, and you can get them shaped like this, even bigger and even thinner, and you can find them at art stores or online. And I like this shape because it has two ends, so I can blend different colors. And you're also, with blending stumps, going to need something to sharpen and clean off the paper ends, and that's just basically some sandpaper, and you can pick up special paper for cleaning the ends at your art store as well. Okay, so let me show you how the odorless mineral spirit works. Now, down here at the bottom, I have put a little tiny square of the darkest color of each of the pencils so I can show you. Now, what happens is you dip the end of your blending stump into the mineral spirits, and it soaks it up and in. You can see that it goes nice and dark as it soaks it up. And so as I break it down, you can feel the slipperiness of the waxes underneath your blending stump, and it will help the color become more vivid as all of those fillers and waxes are sort of melted away. Now, what you can do is use that solvent to help push the color into other areas, and the stronger the pigment, the farther you'll be able to push it, as you're going to see. This is the Crazy Art brand, and so it's just a school grade pencil. We don't have a whole lot of pigment here. Okay, let's try it here on the Prismacolor. Now, we don't want to mix that green that's on the tip here, so we're either going to need to clean the tip or use the other end. So that's what I'm going to do, is use the other end here. Soak up some more of the odorless mineral spirits. Now, it is wet, so it will soak into the paper, but because I'm using, oh, look at the difference. Do you see? It happens really fast with the Prismacolors because there's less filler, more pigment. Melts away that wax and the fillers and leaves behind that gorgeous pigment. Look how beautiful. And then, like I said, you can use it to push that pigment around. Look how far it will go. So even on its own, just one color, you can create gradients like this. It's really a powerful tool. Okay, let's see how Polychromos do. I'm going to grab, I have a second blending stump here, and I'm going to clean off the end because I've used it for a different project. I'll show you how you do that. You hold your blending stump at an angle so we keep that point, and you just rub it back and forth, and that paper sort of falls away and the color comes off, and you're good to start working again. These blending stumps can be found usually in the drawing section of your art store. There we go. That looks clean. Make sure there's no leftover color. Okay, let's soak up some more odorless mineral spirits and watch the magic here. Beautiful. And push that pigment. So what I'm going to do now is in each square we're going to use the odorless mineral spirits from these tick marks down so that you can see the before and the after effect. So let me grab back to this stump here where I was using the green. And what we need to do though is be careful to remember that the darkest end over here and over here is where the most pigment is. And remember how this dark pigment can really travel? So what I usually do is I start with my odorless mineral spirits in the lightest area and move towards the darker area. And that way the dark pigment of these darker pencils don't overpower the light color over here. And what we should find here is we're going to get a beautiful blend, and it's going to help the colors become more vivid. So we move it in little circles, and we don't apply much pressure. It's just a light pressure to help move and kind of stir the odorless mineral spirits into the pencil. We don't want to damage the tooth of the paper during this step, and the reason is when we're done here, if we want, we can come back and add even more layers of color pencil. And that's one of the amazing benefits of using odorless mineral spirits, is you can keep working and reworking your artwork. Okay, so here's the crazy art. Now this is our least pigmented pencil, and we were able to achieve an even smoother blend as before, see? And it's already dry, and if you feel it, because crazy art pencil, I had to push a little harder to get the pigment down. As I take my finger across it, I can feel a difference. This is smoother here than it is here because I had to work the paper harder. But over here, we're going to notice quite a difference. So let's move over here, move to the blue end of my stump, and soak up a whole bunch of odorless mineral spirits here, starting at the light end with very light pressure, small circles. Ooh, pretty. This would make such a pretty sky. Now you can tell when you need to dip back into the bowl. Usually you could feel it. Sort of can tell you're not making any difference with the pencil anymore. Now another great thing that is happening here is all the white specks of the paper is disappearing as the pigment is being pushed around on the paper. This is another fantastic shortcut to get rid of those white specks. And you do it without having to burnish in or damage the texture of the paper. Look at that. So pretty. Look at the before and the after. And when I drag my finger across it, I can almost not feel a difference. So there's still plenty of texture ready for me to keep coloring. Okay, let's see how these polychromos do. And away we go. You can also use a base layer of a marker underneath your color pencil and then still use your odorless mineral spirits. So you can layer this up and do amazing things. I love how by the time we're done here, your color pencil looks almost like marker, but it has the softness and the blending of color pencil and watercolor. It really is art magic. Look at that. So fast, so easy. Dramatic results. Big difference. Like I said, this changed my whole outlook on art when I learned this one trick. Now there's all different kinds of ways to blend. I have many more things to share with you. Please make sure you subscribe and hit those notifications there on my channel so that you won't miss any of my upcoming videos. You can also join me on Facebook. I have live events where I share information like this and answer your questions live right there. So come join me on Facebook. Make sure you come over to my website, coloringpagesbliss.com, because I have these worksheets all ready for you, full of the information you learned here in this two-part series, so that you can refer to it anytime while you're coloring. And I hope that learning Jennifer's rule of blending thirds will help you and make your coloring more enjoyable. Have a wonderful, blissful, colorful day. Bye-bye.